Hi, welcome to this session on polarization. So let me ask you a question. What would you do if you won the lottery? So what would you do with the money? And I just want you to think about that for a second. What would you do if you won a lottery? Okay, so most people, when I ask them that question, what they're doing is they're thinking about a lot of money. So they're thinking about millions of pounds. And what they see are usually houses, holidays, giving money away to charity, a whole series of things. And that's really nice. And actually, it's a really nice feeling. And you probably noted that feeling, the feeling of having all that kind of money. The reality is, if you won the lottery, you are much more likely to win £10 rather than £10 million. So that's the reality. Now, so what's going on here? So what's happening actually is what happens when we're optimistic about something. And it's a process called polarization. So if we're optimistic about something, so just like that question about the lottery, for example, what we tend to do is not just stick with reality, is we tend to polarize. We go right to the best possible option. Now, some examples of this would be when we first start dating somebody and when we're first falling in love, everything that the person that is the object of our desire does is pretty perfect. And then slowly over the months, reality starts to dawn and we start to get closer and closer to reality. And we start noticing that their snoring isn't quite as cute as it used to be, for example. Or that little thing that was quite endearing at one point is now annoying. Other examples of this would be, for example, you go to a gig with your very favourite artist and before you get there, in anticipation, you start thinking, this is going to be fantastic, it's going to be the best in the world, and you get there and you're miles away from the stage. It's good, but it's not quite as good as you imagined it to be. So we get this polarization effect where if we're optimistic about something, we actually leap to a pole at the best that it can be. And it's quite a common thing. Now, the opposite also happens. So if we're negative about something or pessimistic about something, the opposite happens. What we actually end up doing is we end up leaping to the other pole. So if we think that something isn't going to go our way, we create an image of it as if it's the worst possible thing that could happen. Now, because it's a negative, and because our system is geared towards protecting us, we don't just go to a negative, it actually has a larger impact on us than the positive side. It has, because our system is geared to protection, it takes more notice of the negative things than it does the positive things. Now, when we actually start to, and this is a process called catastrophization. So we catastrophize. We make things appear worse than they really are. So, I don't know, you're going to do a presentation at work or something like that, and you're terrified of it, and it's going to be awful. You're terrified that you're going to freeze up. You go and do it, and you come away and think, oh, that wasn't quite as bad as I was expecting. So what starts to happen is, as we start to do things and practice whatever it is that we're fearing, the more we dishabituate the issue. In other words, the system starts to learn that it's not a threat, and we start to move back to reality. Now, a good example of this would be learning to drive. So when we're learning to drive, usually the very first lesson that we have, we're usually quite nervous, and then as we start to practice more and more and more, we get better at it. A driving test's the same, and now probably if you're a driver, what you'll do is you'll drive from A to B, and there'll be no nerves at all. You won't probably even notice the journey. It's become that automatic. So the more we practice, the more reality starts to dawn. And this is the effect called polarization. And if it's negative, it's called catastrophization or catastrophizing. So your homework, and this is a very quick session, but your homework from this session is to notice your polarizations, both the positive and the negative. Notice when you're doing it and try and work out what the reality is most likely to be, what the really probable outcome of this situation really is. Because the more you get to reality, the less the fear is going to kick in. Okay? Now in the next session, we're going to start to have a look at triggers. So I'll see you on the other side.